there is this incredible benefit of gradually training yourself to be in touch, to be in this conscious relationship with objects and relationships and activities that surround us. And I think once people get this feeling that the joy meter is on, that is the resonating part. That is the big part.
Welcome to Spark Joy, the podcast dedicated to celebrating the KonMari Method and the transformative power of surrounding yourself with joy and letting go of all the rest. With your hosts and certified KonMari consultants, Kristen Ivy and Karen Sochi. And now, here's the show.
Our guest today is Luīze Ratniece. Luīze is Latvian, and she's lived in Spain for more than 10 years. She holds a PhD in sociology and is a textile sustainability activist. She wanted to be a fashion designer as a child, and she's now channeling that wish through professional organization, ideal wardrobe workshops, and clothing swaps. Luīze is a fellow KonMari Consultant, certified since 2019, and 1/3 of the first podcast dedicated to the KonMari Method in Spanish, which is Orden a tres, or Order by Three in English. Welcome to Spark Joy, Luīze.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Spark Joy. We're so glad you're here. Tell us about your KonMari journey. What led to your interest in tidying and then subsequently becoming a KonMari consultant?
It is actually a funny story, I would like to think, because I came to KonMari after a fascination with minimalism and capsule wardrobes and such. So I didn't have the classic catharsis of seeing the pile, the actual switch from having a lot of things and an overwhelm to the KonMari festival. So for me, it became more of a way to manage and maintain the abundant, kind of conscious world that was left after a couple of years of purging. So for me, it was a method to keep that balance and through a kinder approach. And it is from that point that for me, does it spark joy question marks a difference in the world of organization and professional organization, being such a generous permission to embrace what we are as people, how peculiar we are, how weird we are sometimes. And it's of course that people resonate with that, with this thing that yes, you can keep whatever makes you happy, that things can support you. That's the role of objects in our life.
We also love the liberating aspects of KonMari, that whole way of viewing things where it's giving yourself permission to almost take things not too seriously and really shift attention to what you're keeping rather than all of the discarding, which can sometimes get you down. So that resonates with us. And I imagine that aspect of KonMari might resonate with your clients as well.
I try to communicate it as the major difference and the major strong point of the method. And also, of course, there is this incredible benefit of gradually training yourself to be in touch, to be in this conscious relationship with objects and relationships and activities that surround us. And I think once people get this feeling that the joy meter is on, that is the resonating part. That is the big part.
Were there any parts of KonMari that didn't spark joy for you when you were going through your own tidying event?
I'm not sure. I can confess that I prefer the Spark Joy book to the Life-Changing Magic book.
Oh, interesting. What is it in particular about that book that you found more inspiring?
I'm not sure if I'm now incurring in heresy, but for me, the first book is like the Old Testament. And the second one is like the New Testament.
Wow.
In a sense, I know. But that's how I kind of feel them, in a sense that in the first one feels as a very strict manifesto.
Mhm.
This is how things should be and there is no other way. And then if you kind of go through that, Spark Joy is very much about no, but basically do what works for you. Do what liberates that inner sparkling thing for you. And if you don't want to fold your socks in a certain way, well, then don't.
We're all spending a bit more time at home these days for the health and safety of ourselves, our family, and our community. Are you feeling a little too close to your clutter for comfort? Maybe you're buried under stuff in the home office or craft space, or you're trying to carve out dedicated space for work or homeschool in your basement or on your dining room table. Or maybe you've noticed just how much time you're wasting looking for important papers and emails instead of shifting your time, energy, and resources towards the things that truly matter. During quarantine, my number one priority is to get as many people as possible clutter-free and prepared for the other side of this challenging season. If you're regularly asking yourself, where should I put this? Or am I letting go of enough? Or am I even doing this right? As you KonMari, a customized virtual tidying experience may be the perfect next step for you. While stay-at-home ordinances are activated, I'm continuing to offer virtual KonMari-based active tidying lessons, including a Tidy Desk special, perfect for those working or learning from home. Visit fortheloveoftidy.com and click Free Consult to discuss the various virtual organizing options available to help you dig out and choose joy once and for all. I think that's really interesting that you compared the two books that way, because I believe the second book, Spark Joy, was really based off of all of the feedback that Marie received, kind of all the what if questions, or the, well, this is my particular scenario. How would Spark Joy fit with that? So that makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. Another thing that, and which is not really about the method, but more about the distortion it has suffered when turning into this mass phenomenon. And suddenly everybody has an opinion about it. In many cases, something that they haven't read anything. So for me, living it is the very flexible method. All the media representations and the Twitter outrage about this lady who will make you keep only 30 books, it just makes me roll my eyes a lot. But I guess that is the price of the success now, that everybody knows or thinks that they know what they're talking about.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because just the other day I saw on social media where the whole issue of the 30 books got brought up again. And I started typing my response and I said, no, I'm not going to get into this. I'm just going to let it go. But it's very funny how it's still kind of a thing, you know?
Yeah, but that's only, I think it's also a very interesting point of analysis, in the sense of that it makes people feel very defensive.
Yes, very.
And there is this attachment to things, and those are my things, and I will not let anybody. And it's like, nobody wants your things, don't worry.
If you are listening to us and wondering what controversy could they possibly be talking about right now, we do have an episode where we dive deeper into this, Spark Joy episode 75, exploring the KonMari book controversy with Robin Mitchell. So if you don't recall the controversy which stemmed from the release of the Netflix special, you can check back to episode 75 for more. Well, Luīze, I would love to know, what are some of the ideas that have defined your work in KonMari the most? What do you find have been the most valuable principles that you have really stood by when it comes to KonMari?
With clients, it's definitely practicing extreme empathy. I do my best, of course, to adjust my work into the type of accompanying that the client requires in that very moment. But at the same time, I'm very aware that I have a very limited access to what possessions actually mean to each person I'm working with. You know, we can hold their hands and walk with them, but we get to observe only part of the very intimate work that is going on in their heads. And for me, it's in many ways, it's just this ebbing and flowing and trying to understand what the person needs at the moment. because it's very profound work most of the time.
I think that's such a good point. It really is. And learning a lot about our clients is part of, I think, the great joy of this work is really getting to know people on a very intimate level. And of course, it's extremely exciting and fun for all of us that consultants really are spanning the globe at this point. And I have to tell you that Barcelona is one of my favorite places in the whole world. I've been there 3 times, once for a very short visit and 2 times for a little bit longer of a visit. And one of my favorite dishes in the whole world is anything made with black squid ink pasta, rice or a paella. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing in the world. I can taste it right now just thinking about it. But I'm really curious, how has KonMari been received in Barcelona?
Well, KonMari has definitely arrived in Spain in general. People joke about it on television, so the basic brand recognition is here. Of course, when it comes to deeper understanding of the whole potential of the method, there is still a lot of work to do. And I think it has to do with the fact that even the notion of professional organization is very new here. Say, to compare the American National Association of Professional Organizations, go back to the 83. Well, the Spanish Association was established in 2016.
Oh, wow.
So this is the whole new thing happening. So the massive KonMari wave has done a lot to push the profession in the spotlight, including people who are doing a very conscious job of differentiating themselves from KonMari, but still being in the field of organization. And I think there's a lot of potential to educate and promote this work, but I would say that it's very at the very beginning of what it is and what is the potential value of it for people to actually, reach out and ask for it. So there's a lot of work to be done still.
Well, it's great that you recognize that there's a lot of work to be done. And it's also amazing that you have stepped up and created a platform to further explore KonMari in Spanish. So you and 2 other consultants have joined together to produce the first podcast dedicated to the KonMari method in Spanish, which is Orden a Trace. Tell us a little bit more about that project.
It actually came out of the last year's KonMari Consultant meetup in London, where they do this parallel thing where the new ones are being trained. There was also a meetup for everybody who was available to go to London and meet up and hang out together for a day. And I met Andrea and Luisa there. Andrea is from Venezuela, and she was actually out of the very first batch of KonMari consultants. I think so. At least she's the first one in Latin America to be a certified consultant. And Luisa is a Brazilian, living now here in Barcelona, and she just passed her test and is getting certified. So we also are like 3 different generations of consultants. And it basically, after we met, it took only 1 dinner and some wine, we have to admit, together. And it was enough to start to talk about this idea of, we are having a really good time. We should record this. Our style is very informal. There's a lot of laughter and occasional irreverence. And even in our trio, a very tiny sample of the KonMari community, it just shows the diversity and the amazing previous life experiences that KonMari consultants bring to the job. Because thinking of it in general is that, as far as I know, and so far in the development of the KonMari consultancy as such, every KonMari consultant has had some other background, some other, profession, basically, I think that's the great additional value we 3 wanted to bring to the big KonMari table. Just this interaction of 3 very different women of 3 different nationalities, basically chatting around the kitchen table. And we happen to be chatting about tidying. And kitchen tables are, of course, the best places for conversations. And I can admit that our podcast sessions, there are often occasions when we just end up not recording because something else has come up in one of our lives and we just need a support group. And that would actually be my advice for establishing and maintaining long-distance friendships. I don't know if it's like that with you guys, but starting a podcast together is a very good way of doing that.
Well, it definitely has added to our sense of community and feeling that, we're kind of part of a bigger, more important thing than just individual consultants. So I completely agree. There's nothing like chatting with people who share something in common. And then, of course, when it's a podcast and other people are benefiting from your shared experience and your process of working through the issues that you face. And I know that our Spanish speaking audience will love to listen to the show. What kinds of topics do you cover? Do you just do kind of a chatting format, or do you have specific topics that you cover on your episodes?
We try to have a topic. Sometimes it goes a bit off the rails, but most of the time there is actual topic. We started by covering the KonMari basics, for example, the often forgotten importance of the vision and the categories, and then found it more interesting to dive into more of a life beyond the tidying festival. So we have an episode about plants, talking about if plants are things or plants are friends. How do you tidy plants, basically? But on a more serious note, also talking about pets and self-care and relationships and time planning, all in relation with bringing the keeping what sparks joy logic into our lives beyond the very immediate object. And all that content is evergreen and available, while we are now looking into creating more synergies among the Spanish-speaking consultants and exploring this cultural richness that we can access thanks to a common language. Because we have now KonMari consultants spanning, of course, from Spain, and we have some Spanish speakers scattered across Europe. And then, of course, we have the whole Americas from one end to the other, basically. So there's a lot that can be talked about of how KonMari works across the Spanish-speaking world, especially they can count that many of the countries we're talking are on a very different moments of social development and economic development, etc.
The question, does it spark joy, is a simple one, but not so easy to execute alone. Extend your tidying experience by joining the Spark Joy Club, our online community filled with our clients, fellow listeners, and KonMari enthusiasts ready to support your journey.
If you find yourself buried under clothing, stuck on storage, or pointing fingers at untidy housemates or family members, we want to help you finish your tidying journey once and for all.
Support the show at the Joy Riser level and receive access to our exclusive virtual community, as well as the Tidy Home Joy Journal, your #1 tidying companion.
Visit sparkjoypodcast.com and click on Join the Club to get started. And now back to the show.
Fantastic. And I'm sure those who listen to Spark Joy and speak Spanish or are bilingual would love to check out your show. So how can listeners find you?
I'd suggest heading to our Instagram at Orden podcast, or you can just put it in Google. It also will give you what you're looking for. And then, of course, we have all the links to the platforms we are distributing through, be it to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or Podbean, wherever one gets their podcast fixes. Also, this could be a good option for all KonMari enthusiasts wishing to improve their Spanish.
So true.
Because what better way to do that?
That is a super good point.
I've heard of people learning Spanish through watching telenovelas or watching...
Exactly. Why not listening to a KonMari podcast?
Makes so much sense.
And also you get a very peculiar mix of Spanish because it's one Venezolana speaking Spanish, one Brasileña speaking Spanish, and one Latvian speaking Spanish.
Wow.
So it's an interesting linguistic adventure.
Well, we have to ask, what is your favorite tidying tip that you've either shared with your clients or on the podcast or both?
I thought about it because I know it's a classic here on Spark Joy podcast. And it's very basic, but nothing beats finding a place for each thing. I know. Both Marie Kondo and our grandmas told us that. But the difference it makes when actually applied is astonishing. So that's that. And on the other side, what I wanted to mention for those who are still working through their tidying festival and wondering what expects them on the other side is that I'm really enjoying the casual in between, even kind of unconscious joy checking of everyday objects, just post tidying. And I know you have some episodes, I'm sure Christine knows which number of episode is that. We're actually talking of how do you, after the tidying festival, you time by time feel like, oh, I have to review this subcategory, or oh, just this one object is not working anymore, or this new thing is amazing. Yes, please more. So those moments are extremely pleasurable.
Well, Luīze, you're right. I do know which episode you're referring to. That would be our episode 94 of Spark Joy, which is KonMari Quick Tips, How to KonMari Light. So that's a great one to check in to if you're transitioning to a new space or downsizing, or there's been some big life change, or you're simply just trying to tune in to if the things that have hung around in your life still do spark joy. You can check out episode 94. Well, Luīze, before we part, we would love to also ask you what's sparking joy the most for you at this moment.
My newest pet project is launching an easy and beautiful app for wardrobe tracking, because I'm one of those people who love a good spreadsheet and wants to make them more accessible for people. I'm at the very beginning of it, and it gets dizzy and anxious at times, but it's also extremely exciting. So cross fingers for me. That's the project I'm going ahead with.
That sounds amazing. So is this something that clients will be able to use to keep track of the things that are in their wardrobe?
Clients and everybody. It comes out more of the side of kind of sustainability approach, because there is no better way of making your wardrobe more sustainable than wearing more what you already have. That's
very good point.
Just that.
Sure.
So, and what I've understood in my work with clients is that often our perception, and with work with myself, of course, that our perceptions of what we wear and how much we have and all of that usually do not correspond to reality. So this should be a tool to play with that. I know there are people who are allergic to spreadsheets and maybe it's not for them, but I'm hoping that if I manage to do a good kind of design solution, it might be more accessible and useful. Also for those who are up for like 30 wears challenge and things like that.
Well, where can our listeners find you and follow the work that you're doing in that regard?
The whole range of my activities can be found looking for Un Armario Verde. I do things, I produce content both in Spanish and English in unpredictable proportions on Instagram, Facebook, and unarmarioverde.es. That's where the blog lives. And basically you will have my name there. Also, if you Google my name, the first thing that will come out will be this.
Well, we will definitely have links to all of your social media accounts and your website, as well as the podcast in the show notes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Luīze, and sharing what's up with KonMari in Spain and more. And we wish you and your fellow hosts on Orden the best as you continue down this KonMari podcast journey, which we know so well.
Thank you so much. We're learning from the greatest.
So now we want to hear from you. Tell us your burning tidying questions or share stories about how KonMari has impacted your life.
Head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and review the show, which helps us reach others along their tidying journeys.
To extend your tidying experience, you can join the Spark Joy Club.
Visit sparkjoypodcast.com and click Join the Club to become a member of the Spark Joy community, or join us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope your day sparks joy.
Thank you for listening to Spark Joy with your hosts Kristen Ivy of For the Love of Tidy in Chicago and Karen Sochi of The Serene Home in New York City. Spark Joy, the podcast, is not endorsed by or affiliated with KonMari Media, Inc. The opinions expressed on this episode represent the views of the co-hosts and guests alone and do not represent the corporate position of KonMari Media, Inc. or the KonMari Consultant community.